What if everything you've been told about the origins of writing is wrong? Most of us learned that writing began around 5,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia. However, a new study is turning that timeline upside down, as marks made by hunter-gatherers 40,000 years ago may have been something far more sophisticated than just decoration. Maybe not quite writing as we know it, but something shockingly similar to its earliest ancestor. Hi, I'm Louise, I'm an archaeologist, and this might be one of the most fascinating papers I've read this year. The story of how humans started recording information might have just got 35,000 years older. Let's dig into it. First, we need to understand the people that made these objects. Arriving at least 40,000 years ago, the Aurignacians was the first widespread culture of anatomically modern humans to arrive in Central Europe. They were hunter-gatherers navigating the Ice Age landscape, among woolly mammoths, steppe bison, and cave lions, and even for a bit, Neanderthals. But just because they lived in a harsh environment doesn't mean they didn't have any culture. In fact, rather the opposite. They made musical instruments like the Gleisenkosterella cave flutes dated to approximately 42,000 years ago. They decorated cave walls with striking scenes of animals. They wore personal ornaments including pendants, bracelets, and ivory beads. They carved antler, bone, and ivory into extraordinary figurines featuring animal species and also human figurines, and even hybrids of the two, like the Lauermensch Lion Man figurine. These likely reflect beliefs they held of their natural and spiritual worlds. On their objects, the figurines, the ornaments, and tools, they etched in sequences of geometric signs. Lines, dots, crosses, zigzags, stars, grids, etc. Thousands of them across hundreds of objects found in cave sites in the Swabian Alps in southwestern Germany. Archaeologists have known of these marks for decades, and the question's always been, what are they? So how do you find out what prehistoric marks mean? Well, previous researchers have made educated guesses, and we've got ideas like seasonal calendars, hunting tallies, and decorative ritual marks. However, this new study took a different approach. Across 260 objects bearing roughly 3,000 sign sequences from the Swabian Aurignacian, they explored what the signs looked like mathematically. Now, please don't lose interest with me saying maths, I promise to explain this simply, and the results are fascinating. They compared the statistical properties, asking questions like, how often do symbols repeat? How predictable is the next mark in a sequence? And how much information is packed onto each object. And they then compared the numbers with the world's modern writing systems and the earliest examples of proto-cuneiform. Proto-cuneiform is a precursor of writing, emerging in ancient Mesopotamia around 3,200 BC. It consisted of simple drawings and numerical signs etched onto clay tablets, primarily used for administrative purposes of accounting and inventory, acting as a memory aid. It is not a full writing system that represents spoken language. That developed over time when the symbols were replaced with wedges, which would then assign different sounds of speech. This example is an administrative account with entries concerning malt and barley grouts. This record shows the allocation of beer. And finally, this shows the calculation and addition of the areas of 5 fields, with each column concerning 1 field. Proto-cuneiform and cuneiform are absolutely fascinating in their own right, and I hope to do full videos of them at some point in the future. And proto-cuneiform is divided into 3 periods, Uruk 5 being the earliest, followed by Uruk 4 and then Uruk 3. When the Aurignacian signs were compared to modern day writing and proto-cuneiform, here's where things get really interesting. The Aurignacian sequences were statistically completely different from modern day writing, which is not a surprise here. But they were statistically comparable to the earliest proto-cuneiform tablets from Uruk 5, the oldest layer dating to around 3,500 BC. The hunter-gatherers making these marks were doing so 35,000 years before those clay tablets even existed. And yet, the internal logic of their sign systems, how they organised and deployed symbols, were statistically equivalent. There's a second finding in this paper that I find maybe even more interesting, but's barely been covered by the press. These signs weren't applied randomly. Ivory figurines, particularly the human and animal figurines, had the most information density on them. Then tools had the moderate density, followed by personal ornaments and flutes having the least. But it doesn't stop there. Specific sign types appeared on specific object types. Crosses almost never appeared on human figurines, but were common on animal figurines like horses and mammoths. Dots appeared most frequently on human and feline figurines, but never appeared on tools, despite being made of the same material sometimes, so it wasn't a material constraint. People were making deliberate choices about which symbols went where. This pattern remained consistent across 10,000 years and multiple cave sites within hiking each other. Generations of Aurignacian carvers were passing down the same convention. If you are finding this as incredible as I am, please make sure you like and subscribe, it really helps my channel out. So was this writing? Not quite. The definition of writing is debated, but by strict definition, writing encodes the sounds of spoken language into symbols. The symbols don't do that. The repetition rate rules it out. The sequences have high repetition rates, so they weren't transcribing human language because it actively avoids repeating the same sounds and words in a sequence, because it wastes information. Though they were encoding something, we just don't know what. Over roughly 10,000 years, the same convention was staple across specific generations and sites. Specific symbols were deliberately assigned to specific object types. Information was being stored outside of human minds, organised by shared rules and passed down by generations. This may not be writing, but it definitely is something. The results do not strictly prove that the Aurignacian signs encoded information exactly like proto-cuneiform. However, what we do know is that 40,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers were thinking and applying complex systems several 10,000 years before the advent of genuine writing. The Aurignacians were fully modern humans with minds the same as our own, trying to solve a problem all humans face. How do you store and share information? It appears they devised geometric marks that lasted as a convention for 10,000 years before disappearing. Tens of thousands of years later, proto-cuneiform appeared and went from a simple memory system to a full language representation, driven by pressures of growing economy and complex trade. Perhaps the Aurignacians never had that pressure. Their system was enough for the world they lived in. What do you think these marks meant? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Personally, I think some form of tally object, maybe functioning as a calendar, is quite compelling, but I think it makes more sense for some objects rather than others. I need to think about it a bit more and read some of your theories down below. I'd like to see if there's more evidence in the future of other human groups in the area doing anything similar, and maybe something about the Neanderthals, as I know they had some geometric signs. Could be something to read up a bit more about. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please like and subscribe and check out one of my other videos too. You can also support the channel on Ko-fi and find any further reading recommendations down below. Thank you for exploring the distant past with me. There's always more to uncover, so I will see you in the next video.